Welcome to the Selling Show, where we unpack, repack, and break down exactly how top experts sell their ideas, their value, and their services. This is your host, David Newman, and you are in the right place if you want better clients, bigger deals, and higher fees. It's a rare and special treat when you get to talk sales pro to sales pro. And that is exactly who my next guest is, Mr. Dave Golding from the Veth Group. Welcome to the show, Dave.
Great to be here, David. Really appreciate the opportunity to be talking with you again. And I am not a pro, but I'm glad to be here with a pro. So
No. See, by the way, that's the hallmark of a pro, is to say, oh, no, I'm not a pro. I'm just a student of the game. I'm just in it like everybody else. But
that's right.
That's great. I love it. So give us the sort of empire. What is the Dave Golding empire? I'm going to have new business cards made for you. It's going to say Dave Golding. His name means money. His name means money. But before we get those new business cards over to you, give us the story. What brought you to the work that you're doing today, and what were some fun stops along the way?
I love that question, David. And I love thinking about me as an empire. You know, really feeds my ego. So I appreciate that. And like everybody, I think my story is really interesting and really special. But the reality is that I'm 25 years into this from a sales perspective. Actually started even long before that. At 10 years old, was entrepreneurial and was shoveling sidewalks and had a paper route and mowing lawns, all those sorts of things. And then my first selling job was at JCPenney. I sold shoes, which I absolutely hated. But today I'm at Veth Group and just started here a few months ago. And I came to Veth. That part is interesting in that I was a customer before I was an employee. I literally had a friend of mine. I was in the midst of the pandemic, 6 months into a job, and like everybody was trying to figure out how to operate in the new game under the new rules. And a friend of mine said, "You've got to talk to Miles Veth." And he literally said he's killing it in outbound email. And that created a lot of curiosity for me because I thought, who could possibly be killing it in outbound email? And the other thought I had, David, is who is even still doing outbound email from a marketing perspective, right?
Right.
And so truth be told, he was killing it, and he killed it for me in that role, for about $300 per lead is what it ended up being. I was getting some really good opportunities at a time when I drastically needed them. So literally in month 2 of the arrangement that I had with Veth Group, I closed, my first deal based on what they were doing for me. And then it just continued to get better and better from there. And so Miles and I became friends. And then when he reached an opportunity in his growth where he needed to bring on a salesperson and really have somebody come in and take sales on full time, I jumped at the chance. So that's how I found my way here.
How about that? Well, give us all the different revenue streams, because I know just looking at the Veth Group website, there's a couple of different practice areas. There's a couple of different ways to leverage what you and Miles are doing. What are the different things that you sell? Break that down for us.
Yeah, I'm glad you asked that. So our core business is based on cold email, right? So outbound email prospecting. And we combine 3 different elements that make us different and I think make us the best in the business, which is innovation, right? So we're really good at making sure that the emails that we send get to their destination, because there's a lot of ways that cannot happen, right? So the quality of the list and understanding technology and domain names and spam filters and those sorts of things. So there's an innovative component that Miles and the team have built there. And then the automation, obviously anybody can do that, right? That's just, you're using technology and applying it in a thoughtful, meaningful way. And again, we do that very well and really take that over, right? Because I think the thing that I like about managed services, and that's what this is, it's a managed service, is we take on the mundane elements of things that other businesses don't want to worry about, or at least the businesses that we work with are ones that recognize this is not a function they want to build, it's a function they want to buy. And then the third component, and really our superpower, our secret sauce, however you want to look at it, is the creativity. We're very, very good at playing into the psychology of different buyers and getting them to respond. So we play into impulse, we use reciprocity, and we use humor. So that's our core business is email. And we don't do calling. We know people in the business who are really good on the calling side, so we can definitely point you in the right direction there. And then the two other elements that we focus on that are more of the long game is podcasting and LinkedIn. So we really believe in the power of this medium. And we've got very good proven results. And again, it's the outsource mentality, right? So rather than building your own podcast, you buy it from us, right? So we'll make it very efficient, very effective. All you got to do is show up. And then the same thing for LinkedIn. Miles has developed a really strong LinkedIn following. So he has mastered the ability to build a LinkedIn brand. And so people will outsource that to us as well. So we don't do direct messaging on LinkedIn. Everybody's there, and you got to be careful about terms of service. So we don't want to get into violating terms of service. So we stay away from that. But we do, the LinkedIn, kind of think of it as just ghostwriting on LinkedIn, right? So we help you become more proficient at being an influencer and getting a following and speaking, to your target audience.
Wow. So much to unpack there. So I'm just going to channel our listeners, and you yourself said it when you started your working relationship there. Do people still do outbound email? So give me, without giving away too much of the secret sauce, can you break down for us what a good initial email might look like, or just the anatomy of it? You mentioned, hey, we use reciprocity, we use some humor, we do our homework, we research these people a little bit. So what's a good example, or kind of just break down the anatomy of just that initial, the very first cold email that might get a prospect's attention for one of your clients?
Less is more in email, right? Just like everything in sales, David, it's mostly counterintuitive. So, when most humans think about selling something, they think about providing all the details at once, right? I go right to the pitch. Well, obviously that doesn't work. And it's the same thing with email. So what we do is it's a drip-based process, which again, that's nothing new. The initial email is, I'll give you a great example. So I got over 50 meetings in March with a Yeti email. We're focusing on primarily small to medium-sized businesses, presidents, founders, CEOs. So, and this is a pretty extravagant example, but it's worked really, really well. So my first email to them is just RE is the subject line, right? So it looks like I'm responding to one of their emails, and there's lots of reasons why you do that. I won't get into the minutia, but it's RE, your cooler ? And I say, David, Yeti coolers are $200, and I want to buy you one in exchange for 6 minutes of your time to talk about demand generation. Okay. So about maybe 15% of the people respond to that one. The next one just has $200, just a $200 in the subject line. And then it says, David, how about that cooler, right? And there's a couple other little things down below, but the primary message is we're just hitting you again. And then the third one is what everybody hits on, which is the subject line is Dr. Pepper. And what we say in that email is, how about if I throw in a month's supply of Dr. Pepper? And everybody hits on that. And they come back and say, well, I don't like Dr. Pepper, but how about Budweiser, right? So what that does is creates, and that's typically what we do, is it's the sequence that we've learned works the best is that third, you really hit them with the zinger on the third email. So you're kind of softening them up, and then you hit them on the third. And then we have, another, if we don't get them with that one, there is a fourth and a fifth. But the diminishing returns, kind of come into play. So that's essentially what we do. It's very succinct. It's very scientific in the sense that the buying persona, the psychology of the person that we're targeting is really important. And if you'll let me just stay on my soapbox for 1 minute, David, I think the important thing here is the Yeti example. We don't want anybody ever showing up for a $200 cooler. And so entrepreneurs, founders, people that have achieved a very high level of success and realize that time is money don't show up for a cooler. What we're playing on is curiosity. What they do is they see that and they think, I know what it takes to run my business. I know how expensive it is to talk to people. They must be successful if they're offering me such an extravagant gift. Or they're just completely skeptical and they come back and say, this can't be real, right? And so I immediately begin interacting with them. And it turns out for us that those conversations are absolutely worth the $200. Talking to the guy that makes the decision and who the more opportunities he gets, the more money he makes. And so I have an opportunity to tell him how we can make him more money.
Hey, if you're loving this episode as much as I am, pop over to doitmarketing.com/manifesto and get your free 37-page download guide to how to sell smarter, sell more easily, sell more often. That's what we're here to help you with at The Selling Show. Off you go. Now, am I right in that, let's say we're running a demand generation campaign for a client? The demand is kind of a meta level that the demand generation campaign is now that client will be offering a $200 Yeti cooler or some other prize, some other goodie that might be more relevant to their industry. And these are the kind of campaigns that you run for them. So it's obviously, well, it worked on you because look, we're talking. Wouldn't you like to do this for your company and for your sales reps?
Exactly, David. That's what makes this so much fun is seeing is believing, right? So they've already seen how it works on them. And the nice thing is, in conversations with you, you told me about how you really look at the sales process as an audition. Well, it's the same thing with this. People who respond to this are likely the people that are going to use it and adopt it and be open to it because they responded to it, right? So, reciprocity is an important element, and some people aren't comfortable with that, and that's okay. But people who respond to reciprocity typically are going to be comfortable using it. And you're exactly right. So we get really creative with the reciprocity. It needs to fit into the person's brand, even kind of their own voice, what they feel comfortable with, what they like is what we use. And that can run the gamut. I can tell you lots of stories about, what's worked in different areas, but you're right. That's exactly what we do.
And I also want to just clarify one thing, because I know people heard it and I want to kind of just rewind the tape for a quick second. You said it's about $300 per lead. I believe what you meant, it's really $300 per appointment or per call, correct?
Yes, per call. You're right. The way I like to frame it, David, is meaningful conversation, right? So what we're going to do well is get you in front of the people that you want to be talking to. And that's all we do. We believe that no one is going to sell your service or your product better than you will. So our model is just to get responses into your inbox so that you can immediately begin communicating with your buyer.
Right. I love that. And I think you and I talked about this in our last conversation, but I really want to hammer it home for anyone who's listening, anyone who is interested in more leads, better leads, more targeted leads. I have spent, it would be safe to say, hundreds of thousands of dollars on Facebook advertising, pay-per-click advertising. If you know anything about that world, not you, Dave, but the folks listening, I know you know about that world. Folks listening, you will pay at least $300 per phone call with any kind of Facebook campaign. The problem is it's going to be with some random dude or some random dudette that just happened to follow through the steps on your funnel. You didn't choose that person. You didn't target that person. You have no idea if that person's qualified, unqualified, Tom, Dick, Harry, Jane, where they came from, what kind of business they're in. So flip that same $300, take those $300 bills that you're putting on the counter, give it to Dave Golding, and he will do it like a sniper instead of shotgun. Am I correct? Is that a good analogy?
Bingo. I'm really glad that you broke it down like that, because I think what is so powerful about this is in the targeting. When I go back to my experience, at the time, I was selling information security services and consulting. And so that's an incredibly crowded market. There's been a frenzy and kind of a gold rush in that industry for a long time, and it continues. And so standing out is very, very challenging, right? Getting to these targets, chief information security officers and anybody in information security is completely overwhelmed, and it's very hard to get through. And that's what this is really good at, is getting through to that target buyer at a cost that is far lower. Because just like you were saying, I've watched companies spend a lot of money on tools, conferences, you name it. It far outpaces that $300 just to have a conversation.
Absolutely, for sure. Let's switch over to LinkedIn, because you mentioned LinkedIn, that we don't do messaging on LinkedIn, but It's like a ghostwriting service that we put content out there. Now, folks listening, I'm again channeling our listeners here, Dave. They're like, but Dave, I'm writing my brains out on LinkedIn. I'm posting content 3-4 times a week. I'm doing LinkedIn Live. I'm doing video. It hasn't brought me a single prospect because the kind of content that most of your clients are posting before they start to work with you is not magnetized content. It is not lead gen content. It's information. It's informational content. It's factual content. My friends, here's the update. And I want to hear from Dave about kind of how this is different. But I will tell you, the internet does not need more information. Internet doesn't need more information from you, doesn't need more information from me. What you want to put on your social media, especially LinkedIn, is client magnet content. So Dave, share a little bit of the distinction when you're looking with your when you're working with your clients. What's the shift between them just posting information versus posting this client magnet kind of content that might generate inquiries and leads?
Right. If you think about what we do with email, it's very similar to what we do on LinkedIn. And you know this as an expert marketer. Branding is an art, just like sales. These things take time to develop. And you need to have an understanding of what gets people to respond. And again, a lot of times, David, that's counterintuitive. So LinkedIn, branding yourself socially, even if it is, professionally, these social mediums are different. And what we think works or will work oftentimes doesn't. So in your example of people who are just throwing information out there, that is not going to get people's interest. What we have to do in order to get people's interest is be interesting. And that is what we're really, really good at. And everything that we sell, David, is things that we've done ourselves. And we get warm leads from LinkedIn on a regular basis. And the nice thing about LinkedIn, if you're doing it right, again, less is more. And there are nuances and there are little tricks to the trade that are constantly evolving and changing. For instance, now the use of video is something that's very powerful. But again, you got to use it the right way. This is about choosing what tools in the toolbox are going to work for your buyer, for your brand, all these different things, right? And that's what we help with. I'll say the other thing too is, David, that I find is it's the discipline of consistently being on LinkedIn, not only posting, but commenting, liking, interacting with people. That's another thing that we can really help with is once we start posting for you, and when we post for our clients, they continue to post too. We want them to be engaged. Really, what we want to do is come alongside them and meet them where they are and help them to become better at using social media in all of its forms to influence and attract. And, again, it's not the thing about LinkedIn is it's all about intent. You don't want to go on there trying to sell people anything. What you want to go on there to do is to interact and to exchange information and learn. And I think if you're going into it with a curiosity and showing yourself as a human being and a curious, humble person, that's the key. You don't want to go out there just acting like an authority, which I think is a mistake oftentimes people make.
Yeah, wow. Because that makes you more approachable, doesn't it? It makes you more human when you take yourself off the pedestal and you show up with curiosity around other people. And it also has more of a kind of a genuine human to human, right? It's not B2B, it's not B2C, it's human to human that people buy from people. And it's all about that relationship, warming up that relationship so that you can have that meaningful conversation later on.
Yeah, it's vulnerability, David, right? I mean, it's, again, it's counterintuitive, but being vulnerable, being approachable, asking questions, asking for help. These are some of the best ways to build a LinkedIn following. The other thing too is just building up other people, right? So posting about something that you find interesting that someone else is doing. These things can be very, very powerful when using social media.
Wait. We're not just going to listen to this episode. There are downloads, there are resources, there are links, there are bonuses waiting for you on this episode's page when you go over to doitmarketing.com/podcast. That's right, doitmarketing.com/podcast. Grab the notes right under this episode. See you over there. Well, speaking of vulnerable, is it okay if we go behind the scenes and do a little kind of sales pro back room, locker room chat? So the next two questions, and we have all kinds of fascinating answers from all kinds of really smart sellers. I like to ask about a sale that you thought you blew, and it could be in your current role or any previous sales role, a sale that you thought you blew that you actually didn't blow at all, and it went fine, or there was a gaffe that you recovered, or there was some and the client either didn't notice, didn't care, or bought anyway. Can you think of a situation where you're like, oh my God, I totally lost this sale, but it came through and the check landed and you won the game in the end?
Yeah, there's been a lot of them through the years. What I've learned to do is not take myself too seriously. And, I make mistakes every day. And I do want to talk about my current role because I think, one of the things about selling this service versus selling information security services, that's a very complex sale. And so sometimes it's hard to really know when you've stepped in it or made a mistake because it's such a long game and you're doing it with a team. And so it's just different. This is, me talking to prospects all day, every day, and definitely working with a very skeptical buyer because oftentimes when they've bought demand generation before, it hasn't worked. And so they've been kind of burned, they've spent money. And so, I guess a specific example, and one of the things that I'm working on, David, is that I talk too much, right? And so, and I'm still early in this. So this story, I'll let you know how it turns out. But last week it was a second call with a great prospect that really needs what we do. And I had a call with the decision maker, was my initial call. And then he brought his team into the conversation. Two other people that are somewhat threatened by this, right? Because he's the decision maker. He's the guy that really is bottom line focused. And this is going to kind of infringe on these other two people in their daily lives. So it's really important to get their buy-in. And what I found was, because I get so excited about this and it works so well for me, I spend too much time talking about it and not asking enough questions and really understanding, because the other thing is my initial call with the decision maker went really, really well. So now I'm really excited. I'm really interested. I feel like, I think David Sandler, he used a term called happy ears, right? So I had happy ears going into this call. And as the call's going on, I'm thinking, I'm talking too much. So I walked away from it, thinking that maybe I've blown it. We'll find out. But I know that I absolutely talked too much and I didn't do a good enough job of qualifying these two other people and understanding emotionally where they're at, right? Because everybody buys emotionally and really understanding what was important to them. I blew the opportunity, right? I don't know whether I'll get the sale or not. We'll find out. But I certainly blew the opportunity of finding out more about them and what's important to them.
Yeah. Well, we'll put it in the show notes. So people that are intrigued, it's a cliffhanger. We don't know how it's going to turn out. We're just going to put a little PS in the show notes below all the links that Dave is going to share. And it's going to say, by the way, Dave won the sale. That sale that we talked about? He won the deal.
Right. Or he crashed and burned.
Totally blew it, talked too much.
Don't talk too much. Don't go right into pitching, right? This isn't about, me telling them how great it is. It's literally finding out from them what's important to them.
Yeah. Now, this will come across as another kind of meta question. A lot of folks, I think, look at sales as a churn and burn, right? You go through the leads, they said no, they ghosted you, you move on, you never talk to them again. Other people say, no, it's a long game. Sales is a process. It's not an event. They don't, only 3% of people that you might talk to today are ready to buy. The other 97%, they're going to buy next week, next month, next quarter, next year. What is your keep in touch strategy, or what do you recommend, even with your clients' campaigns, for, hey, can't get the appointment now? Do we nurture? Do we toss them? Do we put them like 6-month follow-up? How do we keep in touch? How much? How often? How does that work in your opinion?
Yeah, I think, and I'll just talk about, what we've been doing at Veth Group and what works here. And our model, and Miles Veth, our founder and CEO, is a huge believer in generosity. And so, again, I think it's important, David, to talk about intent, because I should never be giving to get. If I come at things with that intent, I'm going to be disappointed. A lot of things are going to go wrong. But if I just look to give, and if I just look to help, and if I just look to nurture relationships, and truly, that word nurture is overused. Nurturing for me means truly finding out how I can help and helping. And it's people that respond to that offer for help that I continue to follow up with, right? The ones that are open to that means that they're probably open ultimately to becoming a buyer. So a couple examples of how we nurture relationships is we will give people free lists, right? So a big part of what we do is list generation. We're really good at getting very detailed, accurate lists. And so I'll just send people lists for free, right? So that's something that not many companies will do because there is a cost to us for every list we generate, but we give that away. And on and on and on. There's a lot of things that we'll do to nurture a relationship, not just showing up to say, hey, are you ready to buy yet? In fact, we absolutely don't do that. Because again, David, if I'm doing my job in that conversation, that initial conversation that I have with them, I'm going to find out what their buying cycle is, what the challenges are. I'm going to find out everything that I need to know to then know how to nurture them. So back to your question too, tactically, it changes depending on the prospect. And certainly it's always about finding that right cadence, right? Even down to the person's personality. I think about what do I respond to? And that's what I do. And that's what I use because I need to be comfortable. And, my ability to be comfortable and to be realistic, I think is really important with my ability to execute.
Yes. Well, and it's funny, you and I did not talk about this before turning on the microphones, but I'll ask, even though our ultimate end product here is audio, do you ever send people nice, beautiful black lacquered pens with gold trim that comes in a beautiful gift box and a gift bag and a nice little note that says, hey, thanks so much for being on the show. It's really great to get to know you. You ever send out the black pens like this?
Indeed, I do.
I think you do. I think you do. So that was just super, super impressive. And we'd already booked this. So this was not a reciprocity thing. We'd already booked this show. I was on Dave's show, Business Black Belts, and then unprompted, total surprise, this beautiful, heavy, nice, fun to write with pen arrives at my door, like I said, in the gift box, in the gift bag with the note. And I was like, this guy's a class act. This guy is a class act. So thank you for the pen.
Oh, my pleasure, David. Thank you for being on the show. I learned so much from you on that show, and I had so much fun. That was the least I could do. But I have to give the credit to Miles. This is his business model. I mean, it is very important to always show gratitude, always, kindness, generosity, these things. And again, it's all about intent. You and I may do business together. Maybe we won't. The idea is not to focus on that. It's to focus on the relationship. And, we really appreciated you coming on the show. And so we want to show that appreciation. And I think the other thing that I really liked about the pen, Miles is 29 years old. And so, he's closer in age to my kids than he is to me. And so when he and I were talking about, okay, what kind of gift do we give? I was not expecting him to say, how about this pen? Right. And so I jumped at that because I still love putting pen to paper when most, people his age spend all their time typing. Right. So I thought also it was really cool that he recognized the value of a nice pen. And that's why he and I get along so well together, because he's kind of a throwback in some regards, like I am.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Now, I know this may not be necessarily your professional expertise that you do with clients, but it's certainly your personal practice, I'm sure, as a sales pro. Best advice or tips on upselling, cross-selling, deepening a relationship with an account, getting them to buy more, getting them to repeat, getting them to refer. What are some of your kind of force multipliers in the repeat, referral, upselling, cross-selling arena?
I think, again, it's being genuine. It's being transparent. It's treating people the way that I want to be treated. So I think a lot of this is, you build the relationship and you'll know when to ask for help. And that's ultimately what you're talking about, right? Upselling, that part is easy because if I'm doing a good job, we're going to continue to talk and they're going to buy more because it works, right? So I think a big part of upselling, David, is just I need to be selling a quality service and I need to be working for a company that actually delivers what they say they're going to do. Now, the other parts I think are really important, which is referrals, asking for referrals, right? Being consistent with that, I think is really important. And I think it's all about how you position it, right? When I ask for a referral, I say, hey, I really could use some help. And you seem like someone who, might be able to help me, right? And so again, just being genuine rather than just making the ask, it's really kind of cherishing the relationship, honoring the relationship, and waiting for the right time to ask it. So I think, at the core of it, David, is just treating people the way I want to be treated and being genuine and not being forceful. Another thing David Sandler talked about that, I continue to try to live by is just nurture, 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 right? And that was before this nurture word was, we're talking about the 1980s when Sandler was talking about this, but nurturing is so, so important, right? Again, it's my intent. If I'm looking to help people, it won't be hard to get them to help me.
Yes, so true. So true. So wrapping up, last couple of things. I always like to ask people about their sales kryptonite and their sales superpower. You may have already shared the kryptonite, which is talking too much. Is that the kryptonite? And then do you want to just move into the superpower? What is the part of sales that you really feel, man, I might not be perfect at a lot of things, but this part of the sales process, I'm a rock star. That's my superpower in sales.
Yeah, well, I can come up with lots of kryptonite. But yeah, let's talk about the superpower. So I think the superpower is curiosity. And I think also when I'm doing it right, I'm actually a good listener. I look at sales as just like playing sports or anything that you commit yourself to. You have to be on a daily basis trying to get better. So that means I need coaching. That means I need to be thinking about what I'm doing, looking at what's working, looking at what's not working. And one thing that I've become good at when I'm not talking too much is truly being an active listener, not thinking about what I'm going to say next, not having expectations, truly just being curious and wanting to learn more and wanting to know about them. That genuine aspect, I think, is really important and something that I've become good at over time.
Yeah. You know what? Just as you were saying that, and I was listening, but the last 4 words, I had the following thought percolate up. You're a podcast host. I'm a podcast host. I think podcast hosting, well, there's no sale on the line, right?
Yeah.
But we're listening, we're kind of channeling our audience, and we're like, well, Dave said something really interesting there. I want to dig into that. I want to follow up on that. I want to tease that out a little bit more. Do you think that your podcast hosting has benefited from your sales listening, and has your sales listening benefited from your podcast hosting?
Oh, without a doubt. Because podcast hosting, the thing that's been so much fun, and this is just like the email in that Miles, I was skeptical about podcasting at first. I didn't quite see it. I didn't quite understand it. And the thing about podcast hosting is, again, the curiosity and really wanting to help the guest tell their story, right? And so there is preparation. You need to spend some time getting to know them, researching them. I believe spontaneity is by far the best, produces the best content. But in order for that to work, I need to get to know them a little bit, right? And so, yes, I think the two definitely play into each other. And ultimately, podcasting has been amazing for me. Mostly, there's lots of reasons why, David, but I think, having conversations with guys like you, Business Black Belts is our podcast. And, we consider you a black belt, so we invited you on. And so everyone that we're having onto the show has a lot of experience, lots of ups and downs, lots of wisdom. And it's really fun to have these conversations with people and understand their keys to success. And what I find over and over again, that it is a lot of the same things that I've found in my own life that work, right? It's humility, it's curiosity, it's honesty, It's looking to help, looking to give rather than to receive. All these sorts of things are keys to success.
Yeah. Wow. Well, Dave Golding, so good. Tell people how they can get connected and stay connected to more Dave Golding brilliance. Where can we send people? Where should they connect with you?
You can always just email me, dave@vethgroup.com. That's VETH group.com. LinkedIn is a great way to get in touch with me. Please follow me. I'm very active on LinkedIn. A goal of mine is to post at least once a day. So seek me out there. And then our podcast. Miles and I both host Business Black Belts. That's also a great place is just on LinkedIn. You'll find us there and follow us.
Excellent. Well, Dave Golding, such a pleasure. We could keep talking and we will keep talking. Just we're going to turn the microphones off now because you got to go sell something. I got to go sell something. But genuine pleasure. And we have to have you back on the show. There's so much more that we'll talk about and get into, but it's been a real pleasure chatting with you today.
Pleasure's all mine, David. Thank you.
And that wraps up another episode of The Selling Show. Hey, tell you what, if you like us, rate us and review us on Apple Podcasts, subscribe, tell a friend, go grab the notes and downloads and extras at thesellingshow.com. See you next time.